Rollie, I have really bad news.
Oh, Nicole, what's going on? I'm so sorry to hear that.
I just saw a clip of Billy Bob Thornton on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter and Friendster, and in all of them, he says that wind turbines are really bad for the environment.
Are you trying to tell me that you're taking your climate policy recommendations from the guy from Bad Santa?
And Bad Santa, too.
Okay, Nicole, I don't know if you've been on YouTube lately, but I have a little YouTube series called Climate Town, and I just released a video about the show Landman.
I am deep in the world of English people building home gyms on YouTube, so I haven't had time for that yet.
Well, when you get around to it,
okay.
It's a pretty good episode. It went pretty well, but it features what I consider to be one of the most popular pieces of climate disinformation that I've seen in a decade or so.
Let me just say, as the host of a climate disinformation podcast, I am so happy that there is so much more disinformation for us to talk about these days.
And honestly, it's getting so good that it requires a lot for one piece to differentiate itself from the pack. The LeBron James of disinformation.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, we've had a sort of moonshot, and we just got to talk about it. But I can't do this alone, Nicole. This takes muscle, this takes grit, this takes ingenuity, and that's why we have Climate Town co-writer and director Matt Nelsen on the podcast today. Matt, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yay.
You're looking strong. You're looking alert.
Yes, and I'm happy to be here. Happy to talk about disinformation with two of the OG disinformation takedown artists.
I think we kind of discovered disinformation.
I don't think anybody was talking about this before.
Absolutely not.
Nobody look up Merchants of Doubt.
And no one will talk about this after because we're going to end it on this podcast here today.
We're fixing it.
Now, Matt, you have been in the trenches of the show Landman. And when we looked at this clip, we've probably watched this clip how many times?
100?
Do you think that's accurate?
No, I think that's actually too high. I wanted to say a high number. 50.
50 to 100. But this is a clip that went super-de-duper viral on the internet. It's from the show Landman, from the mind of Taylor Sheridan, starring Billy Bob Thornton.
From the twisted mind of Taylor Sheridan.
From the producer of The Mind of Taylor Sheridan, Taylor Sheridan. And we could talk about it to death, and we fucking will. But first, let's watch about it to death. So we're just going to get right into this clip here. But Nicole, you are not going to be a passive observer like all your millennial brethren, okay? You're actually going to work during this clip.
This isn't you sitting on a couch scrolling. This is
I was
work.
just going to say, if you don't give me an activity, my eyes will drift to my phone if I'm trying to watch a TV show.
This is like my blue heeler cattle dog. If she doesn't have a specific job, she just freaks out. And right now, she's just panting on my foot under the table. So, Howdy, why don't you and Nicole together, I want you to make a note of all of the specific claims that Billy Bob Thornton makes during this episode.
Okay, Billy Bob Thornton's driving a truck, and there's a lady also in the truck, and they're driving past a wind turbine, and she's looking at them.
And there's more.
And now there's more wind turbines.
God, they're massive.
400 feet tall. The concrete foundation covers a third of an acre and goes down in the ground 12 feet.
Who owns them?
Oil companies. We use them to power the wells. There's no electricity out here. We're off the grid.
They use clean energy to power the oil wells?
They use alternative energy. There's nothing clean about this.
So he pulls the truck over.
Please, Mr. Oilman, tell me how the wind is bad for the environment.
So this is sort of like the tee-up line. This is the do you like apples in reverse. This is this lady lawyer being like, oh yeah, tell me how this is a thing.
Yeah.
And it's obviously what Billy Bob has been running flashcards for his entire life about, because he's about to unload on this woman.
I gotta say, Billy Bob is such a good actor.
He's
so
awesome.
good in this.
And I think that's part of why this is so convincing as a disinformation argument, because he's really good at it.
You're never for a second wondering if he's guessing. He's like, oh, he's right. He just must be right.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. So they're getting out of the truck, and he's going to show her around the wind turbine field.
You have any idea how much diesel they have to burn to mix that much concrete or make that steel and haul this shit out here and put it together with a 450-foot crane? You want to guess how much oil it takes to lubricate that fucking thing or winterize it? and its 20-year lifespan, it won't offset the carbon footprint of making it. And don't get me started on solar panels and the lithium in your Tesla battery. And never mind the fact that if the whole world decided to go electric tomorrow, we don't have the transmission lines to get the electricity to the cities. It'd take 30 years if we started tomorrow. And unfortunately for your grandkids, we have a 120-year petroleum-based infrastructure. Our whole lives depend on it.
And hell, it's in everything.
That road we came in on, the wheels on every car ever made, including yours, it's in tennis rackets and lipstick and refrigerators and antihistamines, pretty much anything.
See episode 1 of our podcast.
Oh, yeah. Wait, are you debunking claims instead of writing them down, Nicole?
I'm sorry.
Right.
Phone case, artificial heart valves, any kind of clothing that's not made with animal or plant fibers, soap, fucking hand lotion, garbage bags, fishing boats, you name it.
What if the rest of the episode is just him listing stuff?
There's a director's cut.
60 minutes.
I would fucking
Red,
love
luscious
that.
lipstick.
Yeah.
The kicker is, we're going to run out of it before we find its replacement.
It's the thing that's gonna kill us all. As a species.
No, the thing that's going to kill us all is running out before we find an alternative. And believe me, if Exxon thought them fucking things right there were the future, they'd be putting them all over the goddamn place. Getting oil out of the ground is the most dangerous job in the world. We don't do it because we like it. We do it because we run out of options. And you're out here trying to find something to blame for the danger besides your boss. There ain't nobody to blame but the demand that we keep pumping it.
This scene is so tonally strange. After she's just been schooled on how criminally inefficient wind turbines are, she's looking up at this massive wind turbine. She's really learned something. Her life has changed in this moment that, like, oh, maybe the cities aren't so great. And then this happens in this scene. A rattlesnake.
Tommy!
What kind is it?
I don't know
I actually just realized that makes no fucking sense. Tommy, and then he says, what kind is it? He's so far away. He's not seeing the snake.
I never picked that up
he
yet.
can hear the rattle.
If he can hear the rattle, then what kind is it does not make sense. I cannot believe this. We watched this clip 50 to 100 times.
Yeah.
And never once did I realize that
It's a rich tapestry.
there's no, but it's a rich tapestry of nonsense.
Tommy!
What kind is it?
I don't know, the fucking big kind?
Does it have rattles on its tail?
Fuck. Yes!
Well, don't touch it.
I don't know what to do. What do I do?
Don't touch it.
Can I walk away?
That'd be at the top of my list, yeah.
Oh my god, it's moving!
I don't understand why you're not moving. God damn it.
That is funny.
So this is my favorite part. He's like 50 yards away, and then in 4 seconds, he's on top of it. Cuts its head off with a shovel.
That is insane.
So this is yet another example of like, oh, you're in the city, you don't understand creatures, and then you don't know how to handle a creature, and then when a man who does know how to handle a creature has to handle it, you get mad at that man.
Okay, would you like me to run through my list of claims?
Yes, please, Nicole. Give us that list.
I want to say, you did a great job.
Yeah.
This list is much longer than we thought it would be, and we had to stop you from making an even longer list.
Okay.
You are a dutiful worker.
So you go through your list, and then we're going to like kind of hit each claim as it pops up with what we have researched about this thing.
First of all, they're 400 feet tall.
Yeah, they're tall as hell.
That seems right.
We're not sure how tall they are, but that didn't,
You didn't bump on that.
yeah, they didn't ruffle any of my feathers.
Okay. They're a third of an acre and 12 feet underground. I also wrote third of an anchor, but I think that was just because I was going fast.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of infrastructure. We didn't do a lot of research into the particulars of
Great.
the concrete
That
base.
tracks. Oil companies use them to power oil wells.
That is true. That does happen.
There's no electricity out here. We're off the grid.
Well, it's technically a show, so I don't know exactly where
Okay.
they are, but yeah, I think there are certainly parts of the Permian that are totally off the grid.
And then he says, alternative energy. There's nothing clean about it.
I think that's the blanket. That's
Yeah.
like his overall
That's
point.
the thesis.
So yeah, we
And
can
he
get into that in
supports it
general.
with,
Yep.
it takes a lot of diesel to mix the concrete, steel, the 450-foot crane to build them, and other stats that I couldn't wasn't fast enough to write down.
And these stats all launched into his big claim about the carbon footprint.
Okay, so the first claim that I think you guys are going to want to debunk is it would take more than its 20-year lifespan to offset its carbon footprint.
Okay, and that 12 points down was the first thing that we noted.
This is the one that we thought you were going to write first.
Yeah. So let's just launch into this one.
Yes, Nicole, you finally found it, the treasure. Yeah, this is the number one claim that we wanted to get to. This is the one that really went crazy on social media, where it's like wind turbines, they'll never make back their carbon footprint. Like they are putting more emissions in the atmosphere than they could ever displace with power. And it's just not accurate. And we know that. Like, there's this whole thing of like, oh, did you ever think, like this sort of like stoner thought of like, do you ever think about how they have diesel to run the trucks to bring the equipment out here? Like, do you ever really think about like what an egg is?
That's kind of me when I get high. But it's like,
it's because
we're using so much diesel.
But the thing is that people have thought about this. It's called a life cycle assessment. So there are these long studies. There's a ton of them. And it's a legitimate question where it's like we don't want to, do one thing we think is good, but then we realize it costs so much in like money, energy, time, emissions that actually wind turbines are totally useless for climate change. Mm-hmm. So people have looked at this. And here we have a study for you to read the results from one life cycle assessment when it's looking at the carbon footprint payback time.
This is a study in environmental science and technology called Space, Time, and Size Dependencies of Greenhouse Gas Payback Times of Wind Turbines in Northwestern Europe. Catchy? The greenhouse gas payback time. Payback. Greenhouse gas payback. The greenhouse gas payback time of wind turbines in Northwestern Europe varied between 1.8 and 22.5 months, averaging 5.3 months.
That's right. And that's not to say that every single wind turbine averages 5.3 months or that even every single wind turbine in this study took 5.3 months to pay off its carbon footprint, but that on average in this particular field of wind turbines, they averaged 5.3 months for the carbon footprint.
And I just want to clarify something because I want to make sure I'm on the same page. 5.3 months is less than 20 years.
We didn't do the math on that. Hang on. Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, great.
It could have been rattlesnake years.
And nobody knows how to calculate those.
You have to cut its head off and then count the rings.
Yeah.
So the part that really, really, really popped off was the just asking questions thing, where it's like kind of implying that this was a new thought that a real free thinker Billy Bob Thornton was having. But like, if he had actually wanted to know the answer to this, he could have gotten back on the grid, Googled it once, and then gotten any number of life cycle assessments to tell him what the actual answer
I was just going to say, they don't have electricity out there. He would have had to go into the big city with stupid women who don't understand rattlesnakes to access the internet.
Honestly, the way they're looking at this, too, of like there's this carbon payback time isn't necessarily exactly what they're looking at in life cycle assessments. So the life cycle assessment is like looking at how much carbon it takes and energy it takes to make the wind turbine. But then to take the calculation of how much time it takes to offset carbon, you sort of have to have a grid that's making carbon already.
Yeah.
Because you have like, it takes this much carbon to make the wind turbine, but then the wind turbine needs to displace a power source that's making carbon or producing more carbon than that.
So like if there's, let's say a bunch of coal plants are currently making the electricity on the grid.
Okay.
And then you build a wind turbine.
Okay.
And then it's going to take the load of the coal plant that was making electricity and start making it.
Got it. Okay.
So in a future where there's 100% renewable, like you won't be displacing carbon. So there's different calculations that are more important for wind turbines. But his point sort of assumes that there is a high carbon grid.
Okay.
And that you are displacing those carbon sources with low carbon energy.
Okay.
So in another way to look at this, there's a study from 2019 that says wind turbines in Texas, for each kilowatt hour of energy produced, they make about 5 grams of CO2.
Is that a lot?
And that's a good question. So for natural gas, the estimate is 437 to 758.
So more.
Way more. And
Okay.
We don't know that for a fact.
And for coal, it's 675 to 1,689.
Okay, so way more.
Way more.
Okay.
So because I feel like the 5-month thing is sort of like, is that good? Is that bad? What does that really mean? But you're talking about like 5 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour compared to 500, 1,000, 1,500. Like the scale is wildly different. A wind turbine that comes on and displaces a coal plant that's putting out 1,500 grams per kilowatt hour, and the wind turbine's doing 5. And that's how you get the payback time.
Got it.
Now, technically, there is a future that I dream of that Billy Bob Thornton does not dream of, where Billy Bob is right, that we are entirely low carbon energy on the grid. And so a wind turbine will not pay itself back in 20 years, but only because the grid is already so low on carbon that there's no
nothing
way
to displace.
And then there's another stat that becomes more important then, which is in more of the life cycle assessments, which is energy payback. So it's not carbon emissions. It's just like how much energy does it take to make the wind turbine versus how much does it produce.
Got it.
And a wind turbine will produce the energy it takes to make it in 6 months.
Okay.
So no matter
still
how
less
you
than
look at
20
it.
years by a pretty substantial amount.
It is so far off. Like, I honestly spent a full day Googling like 20-year life cycle assessment wind turbine, 20-year Billy Bob Thornton, 20-year Taylor Sheridan, 20-year and I just
20-year Billy Bob Thornton feels like it would result in like a girlfriend.
hot young Billy Bob Thornton
it actually,
or a girlfriend. Yeah,
it's like clips from Friday Night Lights.
Well, and then you had to spend a whole day watching Friday Night Lights because I mean, what a show.
Yeah, the movie is Billy Bob Thornton.
They're both good. I like them both.
Yeah, and so Friday Night Lights is set in this exact area for Landman. So it's the Permian
Does
Basin.
this take place in the same universe? Is this where Billy Bob went after Friday Night Lights?
Wow, it couldn't be.
That's a very good
Doesn't
question.
he have?
We'll look into this.
He's
on a
got like
Patreon
a.
We'll get
episode.
onto it next time. So a lot of the stuff like the manufacturing and the recycling of wind turbines, a lot of this stuff is out there in the greater disinformation sphere. I found this one LinkedIn post. This is where you go for the highest level disinformation, and specifically on lubricants. Like if you
I
can
missed
read,
my son's birthday to build a wind turbine. Here's what it taught me about B2B.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what do you call it on LinkedIn? A post? A
A
status?
skeet.
A skeet? This is a skeet from Patricia Pitzel, PhD, called What About Wind Farms? Right now, the average wind farm is about 150 turbines. Each wind turbine needs 80 gallons of oil as lubricant, and we're not talking about vegetable oil. This is a PAO synthetic oil based on crude, 12,000 gallons of it. That oil needs to be replaced once a year. It is estimated that a little over 3,800 turbines would be needed to power a city the size of New York. That's 304,000 gallons of refined oil for just one city.
Is it just 3,800?
3,800 turbines.
Wow, that's nothing.
Yeah. We don't want to go through this whole LinkedIn post. Like, there's a bunch of problems. I think that's super low. And I think a lot of the stats here are wrong.
Do we know what Patricia Pitzel's PhD is in?
LinkedIn.
No, and also this has been reposted around the internet like crazy as different articles with the
So
exact
she probably
same text.
didn't even write
I
it.
have no idea who wrote this.
Okay.
This is just like, it seemed like this might be the origin, but if you like Google this text, like you're going to get return after return of different people saying they wrote it.
Interesting. Okay.
Line for line. But just to put into context the scale of like this lubricant thing, so there is oil that goes into the gearboxes of wind turbines. They are big units, like they need to have oil filled into the gearbox so they don't grind up. I'm not an expert. It seems like 60 to 80 gallons is about right for the current generation of wind turbines. But to put this in the scale of how much oil we produce in the U.S., she's talking about 304,000 gallons of refined oil.
That seems like a lot.
You couldn't fit it all in this room.
Yeah, true.
That's probably true. I actually don't know.
I don't know either.
That seems right.
300,000 gallons.
This is the question they ask you when you're like, at Google, we interview a little different.
How many gallons of crude oil could you fit in this room?
Yeah. It's like, I don't think I want the job.
Yeah, I'm applying to be an executive assistant. Please let me go.
So to put it in context, like again, this is refined oil. This is synthetic oil. Do you know how many gallons of oil we produce in the U.S. every single day?
Of course I don't.
Do you have a rough feel?
I'm going to say no, it's got to be way higher than that if you're asking me this question. 10 million.
It is 546 million gallons.
Wow, I
a
was
day.
way off.
Yeah, and they did do gallon conversion. So we normally talk about barrels, but there's 42 gallons in a barrel. So if you want to make a big number on LinkedIn, don't talk barrels, talk gallons.
Yeah.
And that works out to 200 billion gallons a year.
So you might even say that the oil used for lubricant is drops in the barrel.
Wow. I wouldn't say that because I detest puns,
Okay.
but one might say that.
I didn't say that, but I'm going to write it down so I can say it later. That's
Okay, great.
very good.
Actually,
I
I
also
think
have
that's
one
something
other joke while we're
Patricia
talking.
Pitzel said in her LinkedIn post. PhD.
You got to let me get my one other joke in, which is
Yes.
now that we've arrested P. Diddy, can't we just use all of his lube? Did you guys not follow the story?
No, we followed the story.
His apartment had like 8,000 gallons of lube in it.
Oh, is that right? Okay, no,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Matt didn't follow the story.
You did. And just
I
thought
did
it
and
wasn't
didn't
fun.
like it.
Okay, great.
I followed it enough to be like, doesn't seem like a great guy. I'm not going to think about him too much anymore.
Okay.
All right, Nicole, let's hear the next claim.
The next one, again, I wrote this kind of in shorthand, so I might be misquoting him a little bit. But if the world went electric tomorrow, we wouldn't have the transmission lines to get the energy around, and that would take us 30 years to build out the grid for that.
I'm assuming the argument there is like, it would take us 30 years if we started tomorrow, so there's no point in starting tomorrow. Which, like, okay, but let's talk about the transmission lines.
A lot of these are like at least partially correct, right? Like there is a lot of infrastructure to be built to transition to renewable energy and to move away from fossil fuels. And where Landman's set is in West Texas, and there was a initiative that started in the mid 2000s where they were looking to connect competitive renewable energy zones, basically places in Texas where they're like, this has really good potential for wind and solar, but we need to get the power from there to the places where people demand it. And they spent $7 billion building transmission lines. And they were just like sort of spec transmission lines where they're like, we know you're going to build wind out here.
Building transmission lines on spec is so funny. Because when I hear spec, I think of like a script that you write that you're hoping to sell or use to get reps. And I imagine somebody being like, if I just build an incredible grid, I can finally get an agent.
The Spielberg of energy in Texas will finally recognize me.
There's crazy stories from San Francisco in the first big tech boom where there was people that were just putting empty pipes in the ground. And they spent tons and tons of money just putting empty pipes in there. Like, someone's going to want to put cables, fiber optic cables in there.
Did it pay off for them?
No. There was a huge crash, the dot-com boom, and so now there's just empty pipes in San Francisco.
Cool.
So in this area of Texas, they did build transmission lines. They started in 2005. They finished in 2014. They spent about $7 billion. Now, they do need more lines. Like this is a huge energy transition. There's a lot of renewables coming online. But the work has already started and is continuing.
So basically, the argument that it would be too difficult for us to start building this new infrastructure doesn't hold water because we have already started.
Yeah, I mean, it's another example of him being like, has anyone thought of this? Like, yes, they've thought of this. This is already happening. They put billions of dollars into transmission lines. Yes, he's right that transmission lines are a problem and we've got to build the shit out of transmission lines. But the idea that we somehow can't do it or that it would take 30 years until like we'd be there, that's not really true. And that's not really how transmission lines or energy works. Like, you build it and it comes online in segments, so there's not this like 30-year.
Oh, got it. So
it
wouldn't. It's not like you need to build the entire grid before you can flip the switch to use the wind turbines.
Yeah.
I mean, there are problems on transmission, but like you also work to solve them the same way that if we need the Keystone, we built the Keystone pipelines. Now we need the XL, and like you need more infrastructure. You need to like match demand and match supply and have infrastructure balance the energy system. I mean, renewables are intermittent. You don't get to choose when they make power, and you can deal with that in different ways. One way to do it is just to build the shit out of transmission lines, way overbuild renewables, and then never let anyone know that anything has changed. And when anyone wants to use power, like they've used it for coal plants and gas plants and on-demand power, the average person will have no different interaction because you're forcing renewables to act like old school power sources.
Why can't you just let renewables be themselves? Why are you forcing them to act like something they're not?
Yeah, I mean, so this is like the question of the energy transition where like on the right, people are like, we want to have no change in how power is delivered or the expectations of power in the US. And that lines up with basically like fossil fuels. And if we can figure out how to do the money side of it, nuclear at some point. But for the most part, they're like solar and wind just will never work with our grid and what we want the grid to be because we want you to have a pretty flat price for power and get it whenever you want. But with the renewables, you're getting the power when they're able to produce it. And it's very cheap, but it's sort of like you don't have full control over when the supply is coming. And so like a lot of things in our society, we can work on that economically, right? We can have a smart grid where you are priced where like, oh, that 2 p.m. power is cheap. We're going to give it to you for a very cheap price versus that 7 p.m. power is much more expensive. And so you're going to pay more for it when you use it, which we do for so many things in society, but people are super opposed to it for energy.
You're saying we need StubHub for electrical power.
Yeah. But the flip side of that is that you do have ridiculously cheap power at certain parts of the day, but people can't realize that value because it's a flat price.
Okay.
For the most part.
Yeah.
You also have the potential to, like, some of the most expensive power only happens a few times a year.
Mm-hmm.
So you have peaks where, like, it's the hottest day in California. It's 6 p.m. in the summer. Solar is dropping off. People want to use air conditioning. And so the demand is super high.
Right.
And that power becomes super, super expensive. Like, you're literally flipping on jet engines with natural gas to cover the power demand.
But the breeze is so good when you stand behind a jet engine.
Oh, yeah.
That'll cool you down immediately.
There was an incredible episode of Jackass where that was the premise, where it was just like they just had people stand behind jet engines and slowly turned them on, and then they just like got blown away
that
in
show
this
should have
incredible
won
way.
a Peabody.
Truly. Yeah, and like there are ways that we can shave off those peaks. I know Matt knows a bunch about this, but my favorite version of it is the
Matt knows a
smart
bunch
grid.
about this, but I'm going to talk about it instead.
Well, I just want to talk about the smart grid because
Okay.
this is like a thing that's been promised, and I'm just like, wow, it would work so great. Where it's just like the grid, you have like a little box in your apartment, and electricity is dynamically priced. So it changes throughout the day based on the supply and the demand. So like, oh, it's noon, it's hot, I want to turn my air conditioning on. And also, maybe I should do laundry. Let me like check how much the electricity is. Oh shit, it's like 2 times the normal price. I won't do laundry right now. I'll do laundry at like 9 p.m. when the demand is lower.
As somebody who just got an electricity bill that made my eyes pop out of my head like a Looney Tunes character, that would rock, because I would love to know, like, not to brag, I have in-unit laundry.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Can we stay
Jealous?
with you?
But I would love to know, because I just do it when I think about it. But if I had a little box that was like, you could basically do it for free right now, I would do that every time.
Truly. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
gamifying electricity.
Yeah, and that would make Jordan love it, which would be great.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's the rollout really makes a big difference, but you can see how then if you have these transmission lines you're spending billions of dollars on that are really designed to deliver power at the highest demand parts of the year,
Yeah.
then you could potentially not do some of those projects just by moving demand around. Like, most advocates for a smart grid don't think it's going to drop overall power demand. They think it's simply going to shift when the power is asked for, because you're matching supply and demand, as opposed to just like, demand whatever you want, we have to supply it.
Interesting.
And that's our current grid. And so
Great.
Some of these questions are like legitimate questions, but they're not allowing for any change to any of our society in the future. It's like, we will only do the version of power from the last 100 years going forward, and there is no discussion with anyone if there's any better way to do this.
That feels like broadly true across all like climate and infrastructure and urban planning solutions generally, where you're like, okay, what if we did things in a better way? And everybody's like, but the way we do things now is like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like there's this high ground that just the business as usual naturally has. And it's just hard to knock it off its perch. Okay, Nicole, I'm seeing we're supposed to do an ad for Eubularia.com. Eubularia. Oh, I think that's actually one of Tom Cruise's kids.
No, Rollie. Eubularia is the impact-focused media agency that helped us launch this podcast.
Oh my God, that's right. Those guys are great. They helped us get this very podcast off the ground.
This podcast?
Hell yeah, player. They consulted on our recording setups and our production workflows. They assisted with edits and distribution, and they were just incredibly helpful in letting us focus on trying to make the best content possible without having to get bogged down in all the annoying stuff that always gets in the way.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate not having to think about any of that.
I don't even know what most of that stuff is. And that's because Eubularia provides high-quality production support for both new and existing shows looking to connect with a wider audience and try to make a difference.
Because if your podcast is trying to make an impact, it shouldn't sound like it was recorded in a dumpster.
Learn more by learn more by heading over to Eubularia.com.
Jesus, I have no idea how to even start spelling that.
Truly. But lucky for us, it's written down right here. It's Jubilaria.com.
Got a story?
Yes.
Eubularia can help you tell it. Is there something that you hate so passionately you would make a full PowerPoint presentation just to convince other people you're right?
Do you have a petty grievance that you'd like to nuclear bomb with the kind of argument usually reserved for a PhD thesis?
If you've got something you want banned forever, you might want to check out Abolish Everything, a new show streaming now on Nebula.
Look, there are a lot of serious problems that we'd like to remove from society, but this is more like people who stand up right when the airplane lands, or those weird little washing instructions they put on your clothes. Even if I did know what those symbols meant, I'm not doing 8 separate loads of laundry.
It's a Wild West showdown where comedians argue about annoying things that they'd like to erase from existence, and a live audience gets to make the final call.
Abolish Everything is only on Nebula, and it's just one of the many stellar originals you'll get when you sign up.
We're talking early access, no ads, and a growing library of exclusives. And you know what else is on Nebula? Our podcast.
Oh, shit, that's right. And wait, there's more. My other show, Climate Town, is on there too.
You have another show?
So if you want to check out some Nebula originals like Abolish Everything, go to nebula.tv/deniersplaybook to get 40% off. That's just $36 for the whole year or $3 a month. Join Nebula and start watching now.
And watch Abolish Everything exclusively on Nebula. Okay, so then the next one that I have, I don't 100% know what he meant by this, but he said we have 120-year petroleum-based infrastructure. I assume that means like our infrastructure that is oil-based is designed to last for 120 years or something like that.
I read it as like we've been working petroleum into our lives for 120 years.
Ah, that makes more sense.
That's my take on it.
And then he gets into this long list of stuff that is made out of oil. You owe your life to oil and gas.
Precisely.
The wheels on every car, your tennis rackets, your antihistamines, your lipsticks, etc.
You got all 4 of those? What else did you write down? Is that it?
That's it. Those are the only 4
Hell yeah.
that I got.
I had half a mind to wonder if Nicole was going to diligently get every single thing in that list.
I really tried, and he just ran through it all so fast. And then she tried to be like, well, what about? And then he kept going.
Shut up! I'm not done. I memorized flashcards for 2 hours last night.
All the clothes that aren't made out of natural fibers, which is like, well, I mean, that's a pretty big exception.
Carve out, yeah.
But okay.
Any other ones spring to mind?
Those are the ones I remember.
My favorite one was fishing boats. All right, so yes, Nicole, I think you've even accurately found the tag for that claim. You owe your life to oil and gas.
And I found that tag because that is the title of our first episode of this podcast.
That's exactly right. This is a major and prolific piece of climate misinformation. The argument is, hey, how dare you complain about oil and gas? You are currently sitting there wearing a shirt with plastic buttons and there's plastic in your shoes. Like, you are such a dumb hypocrite. I bet you didn't even realize that you actually love oil. You just didn't know it. We really dressed this argument down in episode 1, so like go back and listen to that one. But I mean, it's impossible to live your life in a way that doesn't in some way interact with something using an oil or gas-based product. First of all. Second of all, this whole like you owe your life to oil and gas doesn't take into account that like the things we would have made if we didn't go full bore all in on oil and gas.
Right.
We might have not built the entire environment for cars. We might have built better public transportation. We might have more walkable, delightful cities. We don't know what the world would be like if the oil and gas industry wasn't so strong and demanded its products be used on every single thing in the world. So the idea that like you owe us is them sort of just trying another tactic to continue to worm their way into a world that increasingly is realizing that they don't want or need oil and gas and everything.
And it is really hard to actively choose to opt out of oil stuff. Because like for a long time when I was buying my like personal grooming products, I would be like, I want something with no plastic or oil in it. It is impossible as a consumer to make choices that don't involve oil and gas, even if you try your absolute hardest to do it. I mean, unless you like fully go live in the woods. And even then, there's microplastics and everything. So
yeah. Your brain now has microplastics in it.
You owe your brain to oil and gas.
That's right. Shit. We owe this podcast to oil and gas. So thank you, Daddy Oil and Mama Gas. It's sort of akin to, I mean, I'm not going to be the guy, but it's like slave labor made a lot of products. America is built on slavery, right? Like,
that's literally what critical race theory is. There's like a whole school of academia that is designed to like tease out how no American can like escape that legacy.
So you admit you're trying to trans our kids.
And it is the same way with oil and gas. There could someday be like a critical oil theory about how like there's this great Ta-Nehisi Coates quote, which you and I talked about in book club, which we just started.
Hell yeah.
In The Message, where he talks about like how white people like become more conscious of race movements. And he's like, there is a moment where you discover that you have been complicit in a great crime without your consent. Mm-hmm. And that's like what oil feels like to me, where I'm like, yeah, I use a ton of oil stuff.
Yes, exactly right. Now, just to kind of end our section here, the oil and gas industry is not just sort of silently sitting back and letting the free market do what it wants as people time and time again select oil and gas. They are pumping billions with a B of dollars into just general lobbying and climate misinformation and chumming the waters. This is the graph from Open Secrets. It's an industry profile on oil and gas, and it goes through and looks at the total dollars spent on oil and gas lobbying per year, and just like look at 2024's number and just sort of say what this graph shows you.
The total spending on oil and gas lobbying in 2024 was $151,134,335. How do you get it down to the ones?
Maybe somebody gave $15.
Okay. And then there's also a stat for the number of lobbyists / percent of former government employees, and it's 727 total lobbyists, 61.9% of whom are former government employees.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. And this is not an isolated year. 2024 is
among the highest.
It's one of the larger years, but the spending has been pretty consistent since about 2007, 2008. They're just pumping money into the world to try to get oil and gas favorable treatment. And spoiler alert, they're very, very successful.
Yeah.
They're also pumping money into plastics. They are making the plastics from oil and gas. Oil and gas is 99% of plastic feedstock production. Exxon is going to build...
Wait, plastic feedstock production? What is that?
Like the building blocks of plastic are coming from oil and gas.
To make plastic.
I didn't know you called that feedstock.
That's what I call my dinner.
Leah, I have some ideas for feedstock tonight.
Yeah. What are you thinking for our feedstock this evening?
But Exxon is building a $8.6 billion plastics facility in Texas. And that's just one facility. There was a Forbes article that said the plastics industry is lining up to spend $400 billion on plastics and production of plastics. This is just a product. They're like, we make this product. We want it to be as many things as possible. For clothes, like they pushed it into clothes.
Yeah.
Right? Clothes did have an alternative. People still wear the alternative.
But they're a lot more expensive.
It can be more expensive.
I don't mean like, well, but we got to use oil because it's cheaper. I mean, they have dominated the market to the extent that now it is not possible to make affordable like cotton clothing in the same way that we could before plastic was in fucking everything.
Yeah, it's gotten really difficult. I mean, plastics are, I think, 2/3 of apparel.
I'm positive that this sweater, I bought this sweater when I accidentally ruined a shirt right before I had to go to a party.
Yeah.
And I got it at Target, so it's absolutely made of plastic.
I got this shirt on the clearance rack in the Vermont country store, so if there's a single plastic molecule that even goes near it, it explodes.
But the argument is like, we are in everything because we pushed ourselves into everything. We drove out all these other alternatives, and now you rely on us for everything because we made it that way.
Yeah.
Aren't you happy?
It's like, do you know how much I do for you? And it's like, gee, yuck.
Yeah.
You think I like this?
He says that. He's like, oil extraction is the most dangerous job in the world. You think we do this for fun? We do it because we have to. That's a terrible Billy Bob, but it is the best I can do.
Nicole, I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you. That was such a good Billy Bob. Some listeners genuinely think we went back and played the Landman clip.
Yeah, they force quit their podcast app because they were like, oh, it's skipping. It's going back to the clip.
All right, Nicole, let's go back to your claims list here.
Okay, the next one I have is that we're going to run out of oil before we ever find a replacement, and subpoint, it will kill us.
That is an interesting point. It's sort of an extension of the you owe your life to oil and gas, and you will die if you don't have it. I will say there is an interesting piece on fracking getting harder to do that we cover pretty extensively in the Climate Town episode. So if you're interested in the fracking piece of this, check out that episode. Link in whatever the description of this podcast is.
I do want to say quickly, too, though, that like we talked to an expert for the YouTube video, and he was like, this is the point that is probably most pressing of everything Billy Bob says, that oil and gas is getting much harder to extract. And without any climate considerations, like there is a legitimate concern of running out of oil and gas. Like not that there's no more in the world, but it's just not profitable to extract. And so even if you didn't care about climate, you would still be looking for alternate ways to power the world because we use a ton of energy. We need it. And oil and gas is not like it used to be.
Again, like so many things in the climate movement and in urban planning and everything, it's like, well, if you think climate change is fake, we should still be doing this thing for other reasons.
But what if it's fake and we just made the world better, Nicole?
It's fake and I just don't want to. What is wrong with you? I don't want to do it.
Okay, I have one more claim. I don't know if I missed one, but if Exxon thought these fucking things were the future, they would put them everywhere.
Okay, interesting. And now I do notice that they are talking about this in a field of wind turbines that oil companies own.
Sure. So that immediately bumps me a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just this one little oil company that's doing it. Maybe like major oil companies aren't really
This is more of a mom and pop oil
also,
company.
Sure. Imagine them like location scanning for this and they're like, well, there are no wind turbines. It's like, well, there's a big field of them over there. We could shoot over there. It's like, but there are no wind turbines in Texas.
They don't exist.
They don't exist. If the oil companies like them, they would do them.
This is an ad. I just want you to kind of narrate. Like, what are you seeing on screen right now?
I see a big field of offshore wind turbines.
Okay, and I'm going to just play this, and we're just going to hear this ad.
One move means countless opportunities to provide clean electricity that could power our homes, our cars, even our morning coffee. Shell is building an integrated power business.
Oh, okay.
To provide more renewable and low-carbon electricity.
They are building them. But to be fair, that's Shell, and Billy Bob specifically said Exxon.
That's true. Billy Bob does say Exxon, possibly because Exxon is one of the oil companies that's notably not going terribly hog wild on solar and wind. Now, I will note that in the new administration, there's been a bit of a pivot back away from solar and wind for the big oil majors. I'd just like you to read the title of that article and then the two highlighted sections.
Okay. The title of the article from BBC is BP Shuns Renewables in Return to Oil and Gas. Pretty concise. I feel like I know what the story is going to be about. That's a good headline.
That's BBC for you.
BP has announced it will cut its renewable energy investments and instead focus on increasing oil and gas production. BP is one of several firms in the energy industry to return focus on oil and gas production, which has seen an increase in profits as prices have increased following lows seen during the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, so I mean, this is just kind of a reminder that oil and gas companies are also moving with where the money is. Mm-hmm. So in a world where it's not favorable to do renewables, they're probably not going to do renewables. They're going to go back to oil and gas. Oil companies wouldn't touch wind turbines with a 10-foot pole is just demonstrably false. Like, they are maybe doing less of them after the election, which, like, this episode was released before the election. So, you know, take that how you will. But it's just like not that reasonable of an argument.
They're just different. They also don't build nuclear plants. They are just different energy sources.
Yeah. All right. So I feel like we've done a fairly thorough debunking of the claims in that video.
I agree.
I give Nicole an A for writing all of the claims down, even more than we really thought we would talk about.
It was
ones
incredible.
that came up where we were like, oh man, she caught that one.
This will not surprise any listener of this podcast, but when I was a kid, the coolest I ever felt was when I could correct the teacher on something.
Oh, that hurts to hear. Nicole, you're one of my best friends in the world, and that hurt me to hear that. I mean, it's so true, because I think what I'm hurting is the version of me that resonates so strongly with. I'm just like, if I could find a way that I remember I'm such a fucking loser who desperately wanted to be smart when I was a little child.
Same.
And I remember asking Mrs. Munzart, my third grade teacher, like, do you know what my favorite thing is? And she's like, no. And I went, because I had just learned about them and I wanted to look smart, I went, negative numbers. And the fact that I finally got to release that little demon that's been haunting me for my entire life, and it's sort of like the Babadook. Now you guys have it. I'm so sorry.
By now, you guys have probably figured out that I'm a real urban planning freak, and that's because I believe it is one of the best levers we have for fighting climate change while improving people's quality of life. And if you want to improve your quality of life and keep up with the latest in the fight against our auto-dominated dystopia, I highly recommend you check out another podcast we love, The War on Cars. I even have one of their hosts, Doug Gordon, here with me to tell you about it.
Hey, Nicole, I'm Doug Gordon, and I co-host The War on Cars with Sarah Goodyear. And we talk about the way cars affect everything from the way we design our cities to prioritize traffic over people, the way cars are mythologized by the media, you name it. We even have some celebrity friends who come on every now and then and talk about the ways in which they're moving away from cars.
And when you say celebrity, I assume that you're referring to me.
Yes, Nicole, that is exactly who I'm referring to. Yes, you.
Nice.
We release new episodes twice a month, and we have a monthly Patreon episode that goes out too.
Now that's the kind of consistent, reliable schedule I wish we could get out of our transit system.
From your mouth to God's ears, Nicole.
So you at home, pull out your podcatcher. Right now, I can see you. And subscribe to the War on Cars podcast. You can thank me by doing one of those little waves that people do when you let them merge.
No, Nicole, that is what you do when you're in a car getting onto a highway, so please don't do that.
The War on Cars, available wherever you get your podcasts. Have you or a loved one been injured from ingesting Patriot powder or one of its byproducts? If so, you may be entitled to compensation.
Well, now that you mention it, yeah, all those freedom shards in my Patriot powder did cut into my stomach lining pretty bad. But look, I don't want to listen to some ad from a scammy law firm, Nicole.
Well, Rollie, in that case, you should sign up for our Patreon, where you can listen to every episode of the podcast ad-free.
Nicole, come on. People subscribe to the Patreon out of the goodness of their hearts because we've already provided them with so much great free content, and the Patreon helps us do that.
Fat chance, Rollie. If climate change has taught me anything, it's that people are selfish and will only do the right thing if they get something out of it. Which is why, in addition to ad-free episodes, our Patreon also has sweet, sweet exclusive bonus episodes. People want content, Rollie.
You need to give our listeners a little more credit. The real reason people want to sign up for the Patreon is that we spend a lot of time and effort on this podcast. We even pay extra researchers to help us make sure every episode is as airtight as I wish my tubs of Patriot powder were.
Come on, people are only going to want to subscribe to be part of an exclusive community of other patrons.
No, Nicole, I think people will subscribe because that's what helps keep the show completely independent.
They subscribe because they're selfish.
They subscribe because they're good people.
Look, no matter why you want to subscribe, go to patreon.com/deniersplaybook and get your greedy little hands all over that bonus content.
Or their generous hands.
That doesn't make any sense.
That's patreon.com/deniersplaybook. Now, we've debunked the claim, but more important than the debunking, because that was just sort of a laundry list of easily debunkable climate disinformation points, is how I ended up seeing that piece of disinformation.
Yeah.
So I saw this because I was scrolling TikTok in the bathroom of my parents'
TMI.
Yeah.
But this is not in the notes for the show at all.
It's in the notes, you guys.
He's going Rogan. He is totally off script.
Yeah, so I was scrolling TikTok and I came across this clip. I had never heard of Landman, and all I saw was Billy Bob Thornton just blasting wind turbines. And in my head, I was just like, fuck, we're going to have to do an episode of Climate Town about this, aren't we? Because I looked down at the view count and it was at 30 million views or something to that ilk, that then got taken off of TikTok and put onto Twitter, and then taken off of Twitter and put onto Instagram.
Okay.
The post and the two reposts have a collective 80 million views between those three platforms. Just that one post that got reposted twice.
Well, but I'm sure everybody in the comments is like, actually, if you look at the life cycle assessment.
You would hope that, but no. The comments were things like, drill, baby, drill, own the, like, take that, libs. The caption of the Twitter video that got 22 million views was, every left-winger should have their eyes held open and be forced to watch this on repeat until it sinks in. Like, this is a popular out-of-context clip that went around the internet.
They do know that in Clockwork Orange, it's the bad guys who do that.
It's also the bad guys who are the Empire in Star Wars, but they think they're Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
The show aired, I think, on the 24th, and it got clipped and put onto TikTok also on the 24th.
Okay.
And then also on the 24th, it got clipped and reposted to Twitter and Instagram. Like, these are all happening kind of as the show is airing. So it's jumped the tracks of the show. This clip goes wild almost immediately. It gets sort of meme-ified. We're seeing these like little quippy captions, and we're seeing it get posted all over the place. If you search wind turbine Landman, you can just get a wall of identical screenshots that's just like a long shot of the wind turbines and Billy Bob standing beneath them. It's just all over the place. So much so that Paramount Plus saw it popping off so hard on all these various social media that they then clipped it out of the show and posted it on their YouTube channel.
Oh,
And
could they use that clip? Paramount Plus put that clip on there.
Yeah, they put the full scene.
Okay.
Yeah. So this clip is all over the place. It's all over, both in full uncut YouTube format and also various social media, and also in the show Landman. It's a very popular show. It's kind of popping off. In my opinion, a clip that could break through my algorithm that I have carefully told my Instagram and TikTok that, like, I don't cotton to this kind of bullshit. A clip that could get through that.
You want to see rope being tied.
Yeah, right. I won the 20 Knot Award. I got the 20 Knot Award in Boy Scouts on accident. I want to see some Marlin Spike seamanship rope work in action.
Yeah, right.
And I get it on my TikTok. I get it, Nicole.
Yeah.
And I got this clip. So that's why I think it's such a successful piece of climate disinformation.
Yeah, I agree.
But how did it get into the show Landman? It was you.
What?
A lot of our research for the YouTube episode was this question of like this stuff to debunk it is not super difficult. Like they're common talking points.
It's
like,
annoying, but it's not difficult.
This scene does come out of absolutely nowhere.
Okay.
So for context, the lawyer who is there, she is an incredibly talented young lawyer, and she is there to deal with this potential lawsuit about an accident that happened under Billy Bob's watch. But if you're editing the show, if you're like, we need to cut 5 minutes out of this, it would be like, fucking easy.
Yeah.
We can take this. This scene has nothing to do with the show. And in fact, makes no sense for her character because the next episode, she is an incredible lawyer and she's underestimated by all these older guys. And
Maybe
like,
they took out a scene where she got a concussion right before this.
Oh,
yeah, she got a little concussion.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're like, what can we take out? Well, not the rattlesnake scene. That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, she decimates these lawyers and basically single-handedly gets this case thrown out against Billy Bob in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the show, and we're like, how did this show get put together? What is this show comprised of generally? And it seems like it's sort of two big factors.
Yeah. So the first one we found, we were like, oh, where did this come from? And then we learned that Landman is based on a podcast called Boomtown. So it's a podcast from 2019 through 2020, I think. It's a writer from Texas Monthly. His name is Christian Wallace. And he covers the oil industry in the Permian Basin. He was a roughneck himself, so he knows the industry.
What a cool name for something. Roughneck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That rocks.
Yeah. They're tough.
Boomtown
They're tough
Roughneck.
fellows.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, we got him. It's this oil guy who has a podcast that gets turned into this show. That's where the disinformation comes from. But then we listen to the podcast, and it's really, really good.
Awesome.
And really,
Awesome
really
podcast.
interesting. And it's about the oil industry, but from the perspective of the people that work there. And it is super dangerous. It does pay well at certain times, but you can also, it can completely evaporate. Like if the price of oil goes below a certain level or oil companies just want to leave the Permian, you have nothing saying you're going to be employed for more than like a month or a year or whatever.
Gotcha.
And the same is true for everyone who's around like a diner, a coffee shop, a grocery store. Like these towns can get wiped off the face of the earth whenever an oil company decides to leave.
A boom town is a town that springs up and then shit gets populated around to service the town. But when you have a boom, you might have a bust. And when you have a bust, everything shuts down and the businesses and more importantly, the people are left high and dry.
And so we have a clip from it just to show you like the quality of the work.
Great.
You know, with a conventional well, you drill, vertically down into a reservoir, which is sort of like puncturing an underground balloon almost, and oil, the pressure forces the oil out. With fracking, you're trying to open up shale formations, it's kind of like drilling into a blackboard. So it's very dense rock. And once you drill the hole, then you inject water, sand, and various chemicals into the wellbore, and that then...
We play clips and then we riff on them usually, but Boomtown is such a good podcast. We started playing this clip and then all three of us were just like, interesting. Yeah, interesting. I mean, and so let's just keep this rolling.
I bet I can find something to goof on. I'll try harder.
Okay, but also, like, it's just a great podcast.
Yeah, just
it's only 30 seconds of this.
Yeah,
so, like,
yeah.
Okay,
Let's just-
pressure's
let's
on.
roll
Here
it.
we go.
Yeah.
causes tiny fractures to occur in the shale. The water shoots into those fractures. The sand, the grains of sand actually prop them open. That's how small they are.
That's small.
And oil and gas is able to come out.
Right. One thing I hear repeated out in West Texas a lot is The concrete in your driveway is more porous than what we're getting oil out of these days.
Have they tried just getting oil out of people's driveways? I did it. I goofed on it.
Nice.
I did it, everybody.
Technically, the clip had ended at that point. So your 3-point shot went in, but it was after the buzzer.
But
So.
that is one of the best explanations that we have heard about fracking, like conventional versus fracking, where it's like conventional is like a balloon you pop and oil comes blasting out. Fracking is like a driveway you got a jackhammer.
I personally think that it's fucked up that someone has a better podcast than us.
It's over now. It was 11 episodes.
It boomed and busted.
Wow. It was its own boomcast.
Yeah. Here comes the boom.
Yeah. Ready or not. So the show is built on the skeleton of Boomtown, but you can't just be a skeleton. You got to have flesh and blood and gorgeous skin in order to get on television these days.
Right.
So they Yellowstonified it, which is Taylor Sheridan, the co-creator, the other co-creator. That's his show that's sprung off into a bunch of other shows. And Matt, I think you loved Landman. You said it was one of your favorite shows?
It was not. I mean, I watched 5 episodes. That was how many were out when we did the YouTube.
I'm going to be honest. I'm interested.
fun.
There is some interesting stuff
It's
in there.
fun.
Yeah.
And then like the Yellowstonified version of it, there's a lot of the show is based on Billy Bob lives in a house with other oil guys, and they're all in their 50s.
And they have one wacky roommate.
They have one wacky roommate who is Billy Bob's hot as shit 17-year-old daughter. But she's actually
Oh, no.
27.
Okay.
And a lot of the jokes are like she like comes in a bikini and the guys are like, "Oh fuck. Yeah,
a girl.
Oh shit, I can't work. I can't work with the hot girl around." So there's a lot of that. And then like Billy Bob's ex-wife shows up and no one really totally understands why she's there, but then she's also hot and the guys are like, "Oh, fuck my ass up." 2 hot chicks in the house. And like a lot of the show is that. There's also a ton of jokes. He's a recovering alcoholic, but he still drinks Amstel Light. I'm assuming they're a sponsor or something. And he's like, "Can I have a beer?" And they're like, "You shouldn't do that. You're alcoholic." And he's like, "It's not alcohol. It's beer."
If Amstel Light is a sponsor, they're not getting their money's worth because he's basically like, this shit doesn't even count as drinking.
Yeah.
It's basically water.
Now this is exactly right. And that's why I don't think Amstel Light is a sponsor, but it sort of seems like they are. In the same way that the pro-oil talking points that are sort of sprinkled throughout the show made me think, oh, maybe like the American Petroleum Institute is a sponsor. But it turns out they're maybe not. And here's an article from the Midland Reporter Telegram. It's from November 2024. Go ahead and read the title.
This article is titled API Runs Ads to Challenge Landman Oil Industry Portrayal. And API is the American Petroleum Institute. American Petroleum Institute Chief Executive Officer Mike Summers acknowledges he is a fan of the former series, Yellowstone, but not so much a fan of how the oil and gas industry is depicted in the new series, Landman. To that end, the API has made a 7-figure purchase of ads to run alongside the show. Quote, "We're trying to counter some of the negative depictions of the industry," Summers told the Reporter Telegram. Wow. So they are sponsoring the show. They are giving money to the show in the form of ad dollars, but it is to say, that's not us. We're not like that.
And if I had to guess, the stuff they're taking exception to is the Boomtown stuff. So there's like one of the episodes of Boomtown.
So the stuff they're taking exception to is the source material.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the facts that the show is based
Look,
on.
we agree that hot girls are all over the Permian Basin, okay? They are climbing on the oil derricks. You
There
cannot
are
shake a
no
stick.
5s in the Permian Basin.
The end of the first episode is based off a Boomtown episode. It's probably the most devastating of the whole podcast, where they tell a story about a multi-generational family that works in the oil fields, and they all die in one accident.
Oh, no.
And there's like a whole section where they're talking about, they have interviews with the widow who's like has her, I think it's her brother who shows up to tell her that 3 of her family members had died. And so they take that, and the end of the first episode of Landman is a multi-generational family dies in an oil accident. So that stuff is in there. But the first episode also includes like the hottest shit 17-year-old showing up with her like
Is she
high
17
school.
or 27?
In the show,
In the
she's
actor,
17.
she's
But the
actor
actor's
is
27.
Yeah.
So we're okay to be like, whoa.
Yeah.
You can react however you like.
Okay.
I prefer to not
I,
comment
a straight
on it.
woman, can be like, whoa.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're just sort of smashed up together. And I don't know why the API would care at all about Amstel Light discussion at bars, but I think they would really care about the reality of this being a super dangerous job and a storyline that is from a real tragic story being put in the portrayal of the oil industry.
Got it.
So we're still trying to find out, like, how did this get into the script? How did this one
the
weird
wind turbine thing,
section get into the script? If it wasn't from Boomtown and it doesn't seem to be like an API vehicle to forward climate disinformation, where did this scene come from? And then we found out that Taylor Sheridan, which is the other co-creator, he did an episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, and the clips are pretty telling. Now, the first clip I'm going to show you is the clip that we watched that I was like, oh, I thought this clip was going to be the smoking gun. So I'm going to just show you this clip here.
Nothing makes me crack up more than the Stop Oil people when they're blocking the highway with clothes made with oil. Like they have rubber.
This is one of my me.
It's fucking insane.
I'm making a TV show about this right now. Yeah, called Landman with Billy Bob Thornton.
Oh wow!
About the oil industry and about energy.
All right. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, got him. You know, he's making a TV show about how much he hates these protesters who are protesting oil while wearing clothes that have oil in it. And that was until I got to the actual smoking gun of the episode, and we're just going to play that clip here. This is Taylor Sheridan talking to Joe Rogan, and it's a couple of clips strung together that really elucidate the point.
Okay.
You know, there's this debate about climate change, which, by the way, climate's always changing. It was changing before we showed up. We're more likely to run out of oil before we find its pure replacement. I mean, let's look at all the shit on your table made out of oil. The headphones, the soles of my shoes.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, the socks I'm wearing, everything.
Small point of order. Neither of those are on the table.
You actually can't see.
Yeah.
This man is flexible beyond belief, and his legs actually are on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the only way that it's comfortable for him to sit.
Yeah, so these are the clips that we were able to really track down and kind of put against the Billy Bob monologue and realize, oh, right, this is a guy who just has heard these talking points before and is like, yep, these make sense to me. Let's plop it in the show. And I guess they had a scene where they're like, oh, we need Billy Bob to kind of dunk on this lawyer to show how badass Billy Bob is. And so they just plopped this scene in there. And in my head, they were like, all right, well, that's lunch. Let's move it along. We got to make the cartel, capture Billy Bob again and threaten him at gunpoint and then blow up his wells later on.
You guys are making Landman sound cool.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
It is funny because he says this, I'm making a show about this. It is not about what he's talking about.
And this is so interesting to me because what I think Taylor Sheridan is really good at and why he's so successful is nighttime soaps are so character based and character driven. And clearly, even you just said, aside from the political messaging, the script purpose of this scene is to illustrate something about Billy Bob's character. And so for him to be like, my show is about taking down environmentalists, when it's no, it's about the story of these characters.
Yeah.
It's really wild.
And the monologue is something that very plausibly someone who is like Billy Bob would say.
I've heard people say, people on Blue Sky have been like, I have worked in the oil industry and that is how people in the industry talk.
Yeah.
This is a very realistic portrayal of that world.
A very specific type of person. But there's also people like Christian Wallace, right, where he works in the industry. He's around the industry. All the people he talks to are like, oh yeah, oil and gas is a good job for this area. It's also super dangerous and I don't love it.
Yeah.
I just work in the industry.
Yeah.
So there's multiple different points of view.
It's interesting to me that he sees it, and maybe it's because he knows he's on Rogan and that's the way to promote the show on Rogan, but it's interesting to me that he sees it from that perspective. And as an outside viewer, it seems like such a small part of the show. Small, but obviously with an outsized footprint on social media, and it's bad, and I don't endorse it.
Yeah, I think it's a very small part of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to push back on the promoting the show a little bit, I can't speak with any real authority on this, but it doesn't seem like Taylor Sheridan does a lot lot of promo. He doesn't
he doesn't
go
need
on.
to. His shows are so fucking
That's what I'm
successful.
saying. So he's not going on Joe Rogan to be like, oh boy, Landman is not gonna get a season 2 if I don't nail it on Rogan. I think he's just a guy who's not that concerned, and he's just which makes it all the crazier that he's got all these viewpoints, and he would tell Rogan, I'm making a show about this exact thing right now, when it's not really about that exactly. Yeah, and so part of the reason why this is so interesting is because it's not somebody driving the bus, It's sort of these talking points that were by and large paid for by the oil lobby interests of the 80s, 90s, and today that have just kind of gone rogue and Frankensteined their way into different people and different pieces of media, and we're just seeing one version of that pop off like crazy. And it's not the oil industry cutting him a check. It's just him writing his 11th show that day and like, fuck, I need a monologue. What could Billy Bob say? Ooh, he's got wind turbines. And then he just like rips this thing and that then gets 80 million views in a couple of days. So that's like the scary part about climate disinformation is that it's like the plane has been hijacked and we break down the door to the cockpit.
It's been hijacked by the cartels.
Yes. Yeah. It's okay. So this is good. Yeah. So like the cartel plane has been hijacked and once they like fling open the door to see who hijacked it, it's empty. It's like a rogue cockpit.
Okay, I'm interested. Keep going.
Season 2. You get to know season 2. I'm J.J. Abrams. What's in the hatch? I'll never tell you.
Yeah.
It's not even forwarding their agenda purposefully. It's just out there to like kind of own the libs. And it's also like setting wind turbine technology back socially because people keep on fucking seeing this clip, believing it, and then living the rest of their life thinking that wind turbines are a green tech scam that is actually worse than oil and gas.
It's also just kind of a perfect storm of like the writing is good, the acting is good, the production is good, and it's so accessible and like pleasant to watch that
and
it makes
hot
and also really funny with that rattlesnake.
What kind is it?
That it does make it very digestible and kind of slips into people's minds in a way that, like, I don't know how I would write such an engaging scene about a life cycle assessment.
I mean, also out of context, it actually works better. Like when you watch it in the show, you're like, okay, that was a scene where like, oh, she's supposed to get sort of dunked on. I get it. It feels like he's a little bit flawed, but like I'll ride with it for the character development. But out of context, it plays much, much stronger as just like a perfect monologue from a very smart actor.
Yeah, I agree.
And I wanted to note, it's not just Taylor Sheridan out here and his 1,100 shows that he's running simultaneously. The rest of his interview with Joe Rogan had a lot more climate disinformation talking points that we've literally covered on this very podcast.
Really?
I'll just play it real quick, but like, here you go.
Every one of their predictions has always been wrong. I mean, if you go back to Al Gore's
Kilimanjaro
Inconvenient Truth,
supposed to no snow by 2006 or something.
All
like
bullshit. All wrong.
Climate's always changing. It was changing before we showed up. Let's just say we took a corner of Utah and we just solar paneled that fucker. Guess what we can't do? Get it anywhere. We talk about things that warm the planet.
Yeah, that did a lot of warming for sure.
I've never heard no one's mentioned the 1,000 nuclear bombs we set off.
Also, I want to note that Rollie had put the music under that one. That was not Joe Rogan.
The problem was it got stuck on the Joe Rogan podcast as they were recording it, and they're like, we can't figure out how to get these sad trumpet horn sounds out of here. All right, so that's kind of the scope of this. We're constantly being inundated by these 28 days later style zombies that keep coming back after being debunked previously, but people didn't hear the debunk, so they're newly attacked by these zombie myths and they believe them.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem because how do you prevent this from proliferating?
You cut their leg off.
You cut the leg off. So in conclusion, I don't really know what the right way to combat these old myths is. I mean, one way that I know how to do it is the way I saw Jon Stewart doing it way back in the day, which is like you make a piece of content about how they're wrong and you put it out in the world and you try to get as many people to see it. So there's a question of like, should Paramount Plus be trying to censor speeches like Billy Bob makes in their show? I don't really think that's a good option.
I don't think it's a good option for Paramount because if they do that, Taylor Sheridan is going to leave and their business will crater.
Yeah, it's also not a great option for like free speech because you want to be able to have characters say things that are maybe morally and objectively wrong, but that the character believes.
Yeah, but then you get into the zone of like it's not a private corporation's job to uphold free speech. Like if Paramount says, hey, Taylor Sheridan, your character can't say this stuff about wind turbines, then who's to say they won't come to The Daily Show where I work and say like, hey, you can't do this episode about XYZ other thing. It's like you just don't want them to get too involved in the creative process because then it just makes content worse.
Yeah, and the expectation that you're going to be able to stop any book that is false or stop any character saying anything that is false is just unreasonable.
It doesn't make
It's
sense.
more about setting up like a culture of questioning and a culture of learning. That people who watch this clip apparently do want to learn about wind turbines, right?
Yeah.
They're interested at least for 90 seconds in learning something they didn't know before. They're learning the wrong information, but they're interested in learning a little bit more about wind turbines for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people like to have mental heuristics in their head where they can put to bed thinking about this thing again. Here's a hammock for your brain, and the hammock says wind turbines are actually worse than oil and gas. And it's like, great, I can think about this never again, but anytime anyone says some shit about it, I'm going to have a handy like, did you know this thing? And I think that is why people really liked this, and I think that's a dangerous thing to have out in the world incorrectly, but I don't think it's Paramount Plus's job to police that. And I also don't think it's like TikTok or Instagram's job to stop movies and TV clips from going on for any other reason than like a copyright violation or something.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between like somebody starting the Capitol riot on Facebook, which should probably gotta tamp down on that, or saying like you can treat COVID with bleach, as opposed to like this clip being reposted. I think it's that porn thing where it's like, I'll know it when I see it.
I'll know it when I see it on Facebook.
I also want to say hammock for your brain. I got stuck there because I was like, oh, yeah.
You visualize it?
I didn't even visualize it. I like had a deep sensory response where I was like, my brain was like, yeah, we got to get us one of them.
See, it's your brain.
We got to get us one of them.
Your brain is running the ship.
It was like from deep back here.
So what's the solution to this? I'm not really sure besides education and good governmental energy
the solution is we got to write a show called Windman.
Okay, I'm listening.
And it's all about life cycle reports.
Assessments.
See, life cycle assessment.
That's a tough
We're
break.
already starting
on
our heels. Yeah.
All right, folks. So that's the conclusion. I'm sorry we didn't have a more specific call to action or a really strong landing that we could stick. But my 2 cents are education, like get more content out in the world that's like catchy and is a hammock for your brain, but is correct. I think that's a good thing. And then also like let energy policy do its thing. Like renewable energy is simply on its way up. It's good and it's growing, and we just got to support it where we can.
And I guess just like holding the people with a platform accountable. So like, I don't think Joe Rogan is getting my texts, but like if he comes up in conversation and your friend is like, I heard this, then you could be like, well, that's not actually right. And the thing about Joe Rogan is if you listen to the people on his podcast who like have different opinions, he doesn't really argue. Like every time Bill Burr is on his podcast, Bill Burr's like, you're a fucking idiot. And he laughs.
Yeah.
He is an extremely agreeable guy. That is where a lot of it comes from, where people just say crazy shit if they do on the podcast, and he's like
totally
interesting.
Yeah.
He just is like having like a normal, very, very agreeable conversation just with some people that have insane ideas about how the world works.
Yeah. So I think like the more that you can like hold people with a platform accountable and talk to people who listen to that kind of stuff and are maybe susceptible to it, that's a little thing that we can all do.
I do think with some of this disinformation stuff too, like it dances near conversations that are actually difficult and are actually real conversations, like the transmission line thing. Like the transition to using more renewable energy is a difficult transition. Like there will be change. Like there is a better version of society going forward where we use more solar and wind, but there will be challenges. And so dancing around that point is not a bad place to be. They're just having the wrong conversation. Like they're having a less interesting conversation. Like, oh, what do we do because a lot of our stuff is made from oil and gas? That is a legitimate concern. They just take it to a very short and very often stupid end that shuts everything down instead of having a real conversation of like, why are we cramming oil and gas into everything in our
so
lives?
much shit that doesn't need it.
Yeah.
It's the kind of argument style that is, we're drawing lines right now. I'm standing behind this line and we're fighting immediately. And it's not a constructive thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, if people are watching this clip, like they're already in the ballpark of interesting conversations. They're just taking it to a stupid end.
That is such a more optimistic perspective on this than I expected this podcast to end on.
Oh, yeah.
To be like, they're really close to being interesting. Let's just like guide them a little further.
Just a little push in the direction of their dreams. Yeah.
Just imagine all our brains, 7 billion brains,
in hammocks,
lying on a beach relaxing for once.
Plastic spoon in
still
hand.
Honestly, feel like tingling in the back of my head. My brain
Yeah.
is like, where do you get one?
Okay, Rollie, normally we say that we've spent thousands of dollars on various improv classes, and that's why we do improv at the end. But now that Matt is here, we've spent certainly over $10,000 on various
yeah, we
improv.
have really we've stepped it up. I used to run an improv and sketch theater in San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
I've
So
spent-
we might even be in the 20s at this point.
I think we're six figures. In terms of
Certainly in terms
wasted
of
time.
lost
Yeah.
lost
oh, yeah. If we think
potential.
about like time as money, absolutely six
millions,
figures.
a house. Imagine a nice house.
All right, so to get our money's worth, let's do a scene where you guys are, you're Billy Bob, Nicole,
I sure
and then
am.
you're lawyer lady, Matt.
Yes, thank you.
But you're lawyer lady from every scene of the show where she's actually really smart and not just a pushover.
Okay.
And then I shall play the rattlesnake.
Which may or may not come up.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Oil Man, why don't you tell me how wind turbines are bad for the environment?
Well, these sons of bitches are over 400 feet tall. They take up a third of an acre in concrete that goes 12 feet underground. And that is bad. And oil companies use these to power the oil wells. It requires diesel power to mix the concrete that holds these sons of bitches up. And also to make the steel and to power the 450-foot crane that builds these wind turbines, not to mention all the lubrication they require. More than a P. Diddy party, I might add.
Wait, can you put down the list? I feel like you're just reading from a list. I can see it.
I don't want to forget anything.
I don't think you're going to forget something. Why do you think these are bad?
It's because do you know how long it would take one of these to offset the carbon footprint of making it? 20 years.
That can't be right. Is that written down?
And don't even get me started on solar power.
I don't
want to
get you started on any of
lithium in
this.
your Tesla.
I am starving, and I would love to go get a bite to eat. I just saw the wind turbines. I said, "Oh, those wind turbines," and I feel like I've been sort of kidnapped and taken over.
If we lived in a world without electricity and had no transmission lines, it would take us 30 years to build out what we need for these wind turbines.
If we had no electricity,
Look,
you would need no transmission lines.
when I was taking notes, he was speaking pretty fast.
Look,
so.
I am here to save you from potentially jail, and you need me to be good at that job. I don't really need to be over here. I think I'm going to be able to do the law part of this just fine. I was wondering if we could eat. Is there a local cuisine that we should try?
Did you know that we have a 120-year petroleum-based infrastructure?
Nope.
Well, we do.
What does that mean?
Moving on. The wheels on every car and your tennis racket and your antihistamines and your lipstick and all the clothes that are not made of natural fibers are all made of oil. What do you think about that, Miss Smarty Pants?
I think that kind of sucks. I'm sure there's like good reasons for some of it. I guess I would love to see a transition, and I hope
So
we're
you're
doing
telling
that.
me you don't want any more tennis rackets?
First off, can we not do this anymore? And if you need to do this, I'll walk. I'll walk or run. Is there a town that's close by?
No, because we're off the grid.
I think it would be really helpful
Uh-huh.
if we went back to whatever office we can use and worked on the case for tomorrow.
Okay, well, you made a comment about these wind turbines, and I had my own personal grudge against them, and I'm working through some stuff because in addition to not having a grid or electricity out here, we don't have good therapists. And so now you are sort
I'm
of
sorry about
fulfilling
that.
that role for me.
Okay.
Oh, there's that rattlesnake again, which I'm not scared of, but I bet you are because you're a girl and from the city.
It seems like it's still kind of far away. I hear the rattling, but I can't really see.
Hey, what's up? I'm the rattlesnake.
And it's a talking
shit.
rattlesnake.
Oh, yeah. Hey, actually, did you guys know that 99% of rattlesnakes speak fluent English?
Really?
Yes, it's true. They all speak English. We just choose not to talk that often. We also all have arms and legs. We just don't show you.
Wow. See, we're all learning facts today.
Wow. Now,
And that fact
actually-
is just as true as when I said that we needed a 20-year lifespan to offset the carbon footprint of one of these turbines.
Did you know that snakes have a 20-year lifespan too?
That might be true. I genuinely don't know.
Look, here's the thing about
I feel like
snakes.
I'm getting trapped in a vaudeville routine. Is this something you guys do? I am
Look.
sort of losing my mind out here. I just thought I was going to do the law part of this. I thought I was coming to Texas to do a simple job.
Yeah, man,
And
you're
now-
trapping us out here in the Texas wilderness. What do you have to say for yourself, Mr. Landman?
I say that oil extraction is the most dangerous job in the world, and we only do it because there's no other options.
Do you want to get out of here?
I am going to walk.
Yeah, me
I am
too.
just
We're going to walk.
I honestly have found your driving to be a little reckless, and I've noticed that you have been drinking Amstel Lights almost nonstop since we started spending time
Those
together.
don't count as alcohol. They're basically water.
They do. Everyone in this town has a very weird response when you say that, but I want to tell you they do have alcohol. They do have alcohol in them. I don't know why the bartender doesn't bring that up. I don't know why your ex-wife laughs at you when you say that. I don't know what the hell's going on with your daughter. But
My
Amstel
hot
Light,
daughter?
that is
my
what,
hot daughter?
She is a really hot daughter.
How do you know what my daughter looks like, Snake?
I've been texting her on my phone made from oil products.
See? And that snake couldn't text my daughter. We owe our lives to oil and gas. That is what allows snakes to text 17-year-old hot girls.
I honestly don't know if that's true or not, and it doesn't really affect me. There's other people that are worrying about this.
We are dealing with the cartel, okay?
And cut to the writer's room. Hey, Taylor, about the latest script.
We just wanted to bring up the current episode 3 is looking like it's about 900 pages.
Yeah.
And a couple of pages are just the snake rattling.
Uh-huh. It's ambiance. That'll shoot fast.
Okay, you're $400 million over budget. The last script was a 30-minute monologue from Billy Bob Thornton talking about
his hot daughter.
His hot daughter.
The hot daughter. I'm going to break from the pair of us here. More. I think more would be awesome in the episode. That was what I was going to bring up. We're going to do 900
You're going to love the
pages.
series finale of Yellowstone where I'm in it and I play 2 games of strip poker with Bella Hadid.
Is that true?
Yes.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I would
Sold.
love to see that. Yeah.
12 more seasons.
Yeah.
Great.
Done it again, Sheridan.
The Climate Deniers Playbook was created by Rollie Williams, Ben Boult, and me, Nicole Conlan. Rollie and I are the hosts, Ben is the executive producer, and the show is edited by Laura Conte.
The show is also produced by Daniella Philipson and Irene Plagianos.
Archival research by Margaux Sachs, with additional research and fact-checking by Carly Rizzuto and Canute Haroldson.
Our theme music was created by the wickedly talented Tony Dominic.
And our show's artwork is by Jordan Dahl, who, used to be my boyfriend, but now he's my fiancé.
Oh, shit. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And special thanks to the Civil Liberties Defense Center.
And to all of you who listen to the show.
And apparently, even the credits.
Rollie, don't neg our listeners.
Well, how else am I going to demonstrate I'm a high-value male?
Oh, God, don't ever say high-value male ever again.
But I am a high-value male.
Why aren't you wearing that top hat?
Because it makes me tall.
Where do you get one?